Welcome back to the Lazy Money Machine podcast. On the other side of the world, Graham, how are you doing, Graham?
I am great.
In Blimey, how is it the weather in Blimey?
Blighty.
Blighty. Oh, Blighty. Oh, shit.
I know nobody calls it blighty apart from foreigners who think they're being clever.
See, that's what. There you go. You know, see, try to crack a joke. It's always a bad idea. So, but how you're in the UK? So, how's things over there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's It's middle of October.
Okay.
So
suicide rates are up.
Probably. No, it's actually pretty good. I mean,
Okay.
you know what's been happening in I mean, I don't live in the UK anymore, so I can say with authority, a lot of people who live here sort of say, oh, yeah, it's a heat wave and it's like 20 degrees.
Right. Everybody gets out their bikinis, right?
Yeah, but they've had a hurricane blow in the last couple of days. So they dragged in all this air from the Sahara. So the whole thing's been glowing orange. It's very weird. Yesterday I had this orange sunset.
Oh, wow.
So that all this dust was blowing in from it used to be like when I lived in the Canary Islands. You used to get all this sort of dust come in from the desert.
Right.
It's quite eerie. It looks like something out of Star Wars, right? So, yeah, that's quite mad. And then it really was in the 20s. It was like 23, 24, which is, for here, this time of year was crazy.
Right.
So there you go. So you asked a question, you didn't expect that answer, but there you go. Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. Today, I found an article on Business Insider. I think one of the better blogs nowadays. Lots of interesting stuff on there. And this article talks about, we'll link it up, obviously, talks about a Dutchman. And his name is Didi Taihuttu, which means he's from Ambon or from somewhere in Indonesia for sure. Father of three. And basically what he did is he sold everything so that he and his family could go and pursue a life of Bitcoin hunting. And then the article continues in saying, basically everybody told we're crazy, but we're an adventurous family and we're going to gamble for a moment to live minimalistic lives. So what he has done is first he went on a 9-month trip and then he came back. And in the 9-month trip, so basically he sold all his stuff first and he went on a 9-month trip. In the trip, he learned how to read markets on buying and selling virtual currency. And then when he came back, he did even a more radical thing. He basically sold everything he had so that all the cash that he could free up would be used to purchase Bitcoins. And on top of that, he basically is now, he's now living very minimalistic. So I think they live in a camping site in a tent somewhere, and what he says is that it's beneficial for the whole family. So basically, he says, this is to see that not materialistic is good, and he's basically going to squeeze every last penny out of his life until 2020, by which he hopes that Bitcoin is going to be a normal currency and it's going to be worth fortunes, and come out a millionaire, I think. Yeah, he's living on a campsite with his 3 daughters, all sharing a single room. So yeah, it's amazing. I know Dutch people are a bit crazy, but this, I think even to my standards, this is pretty insane. But very admirable, and I think it's a good starting point to just have a look at some of these things and see what we think about it.
Yeah, hold on. Let's just understand what's going on. So he's basically sold all his stuff. He's bought Bitcoin, and his family's living in a campsite.
That's the bottom line of it. That's what it is.
Okay. All right. Let's back up a little bit on this guy. Right?
Okay.
Now, okay. So let's talk about Bitcoin first. Okay, fine. If you want to gamble your future on Bitcoin, that's fine. You got to understand that you're gambling your money, right? You're not buying anything that has a track record.
Right.
I've been in Bitcoin. I've sold out Bitcoin. Bitcoin's about 4,000 euros now, just under $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
I sold out around about $3,000.
Right.
Fine. I made money on it. I made a good chunk of money on that. But I think the problem now with Bitcoin is people are looking at these stories and thinking, oh, I need to be into Bitcoin because it's going to go to 100,000. Mm-hmm. That's where the bubble happens, right? I think right now we're kind of about market price of Bitcoin. I don't think it's going to go a lot higher because now we're starting to see. This is what they often said: is you're in a bubble when a taxi driver gives you recommendations, right?
Yes.
I think it ain't going to be long before you're sitting in a taxi somewhere, whether it's Jakarta or wherever. And he said, hey, look, I've just bought Bitcoin. You should get into Bitcoin. So I think we're in a bubble, Bitcoin. But this whole thing about it being in a campsite, so what if we're not in a bubble? If we're in a bubble, we're not. But you have to live in a campsite now.
Mm-mm.
What's that about?
Well, I think the interesting thing I thought about this is that in our Lazy Money Machine book, we speak about creating elasticity. And the way we define it is find a way to spend less than you make. And again, that might seem quite straightforward and quite obvious, but for many people in many situations, they usually spend the same or sometimes even more than what they make. And here's this Dutchman who has said, okay, I want to invest. Maybe that's gamble, whatever he wants. He wants to buy Bitcoin. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to squeeze every last penny out of our cash flow to be able to do it. So he has drastically removed any expensive things from his life, got rid of his house, now lives in a very cheap campsite. But what it does for him is that he does have free cash to do things with. And I think that's pretty interesting. Maybe you don't need to take it to this extreme. Maybe you're not a camper or you don't like the weather or whatever. But he basically thought, okay, there is something I can do. Many people complain about not having money to invest. I see an opportunity in Bitcoin here. I want to try this, and I'm going to go and create the elasticity and the free room to go and invest. I thought that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm sort of. Let me just take the other side on this one. I think that he's got it right in terms of doing the elasticity thing. We talk about that in the book, right?
Yep.
And I think that the Lazy Money Machine book is all about how to create elasticity in your life.
Right.
Okay, so this is all about elasticity. I'm going to take the other side of the coin on this one, which I think is elasticity is important. You've mentioned that. We talk about that in the book, Lazy Money Machine. You've got to create elasticity in your life. But has he gone too far? So let's have a look at it, right? He sold all his stuff so he could buy Bitcoin. Right. There's going to be two outcomes here, maybe. Mm-hmm. One is that, well, Bitcoin's a bubble, and then he loses everything. Or it goes down to 1,000, or it goes down to 500, or whatever. Yep. If that's the case, and he spent all this time with his family in a campsite.
Yep.
Well, what's the fun in that? And then the second one is, well, maybe Bitcoin goes to 1 million. In that case, he's sitting on top of several millions, if not billions, whatever he's hoarding there, right? Mm-hmm. If that's the case, then, well, he doesn't then need, well, if he's got 100 million or 50 million, it doesn't really make much difference, does it? So did he need to be in a campsite?
Well, he sold his house. I didn't have the Business Insider article. I just dug it up. Basically, he sold his house. So his house was for sale for 8 months in Venlo, city in the Netherlands, and it wasn't sold. And then he decided that he's going to sell it for 85 Bitcoins. And it got a huge media attention. So now the property has been sold under reservation to a cryptocurrency trader. So he basically got his selling price, but in cryptocurrency.
Who got the best deal there? I think the guy selling his cryptocurrency got the best deal, don't you think?
Well, at least he, got a fiat currency translated into land and bricks. So,
right. No, the fiat currency is well, yeah. I mean, he sold Bitcoin to convert that into bricks and mortar, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So I think the guy who actually sold the Bitcoin got the good deal there, right? Because he's basically taking something which you can't use, has no value apart from what somebody else would pay for it, and converting it into something which you can live in. And I think, the better idea is not Bitcoin or property. I think Bitcoin and property. But I think this guy, I'm not sure about this guy, what he's doing. What I think he should have done was take half of it, buy a smaller house or rent a house, take half in Bitcoin and invest the rest in a rental property, right?
Yeah, I think this is an all-in strategy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And he says we want to buy as much Bitcoin as possible. So the car is for sale, everything is for sale. And he wants to buy as much of that as possible, assuming that by 2020 it's going to be worth a fortune. And
assuming. It's like a roll of a dice, isn't it? It's like we're going to have all or nothing. We're going to have like 50 million or we're going to just live in a campsite.
Yeah, it's a small chalet, so they're not living in a tent. I thought they were living in a tent,
But yeah, well,
but still,
it's like it's a portable home.
Yeah,
Right. It's made out of wood and plastic.
yeah. So
And
then
it leaks in the winter.
then in the article, the last sentence is very interesting. And then what if things go wrong? Oh, then we will be without money for a moment, but I don't think that that's going to be the worst thing that can happen in life. But that's good. I think that's good.
But it's one of the worst things that can happen in life, right?
Well, but again, I think he sort of believes then in his ability to go and figure out something new, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I need to speak to this guy. He needed, he's taken a big gamble, not just himself, but his family's future. I mean, if it all goes wrong, it can't all go wrong in property, because in property, if it all goes wrong, the worst ever thing that can happen in property is the value goes down. But the house is still there. You can still live in it.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I don't get, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I sort of try to provoke a bit of a discussion today, but obviously, what we teach is not this, right? We strongly advise you against these kind of speculative moves. I admire people that do, but I think for the most part, this is not what you want to do. I think you want to learn a system. You want to learn a way to make more money than you can make from a salary in a way that is, safe, relatively safe and controlled, and not go and, bet the bank or bet the life or bet the house or everything on one move. And as you always say, Graham, it's fine to do this on the side or as an extra thing, but don't make this your main strategy, please, because it's too dangerous.
It's a roll of a dice, and you don't. I think if you were 18 years old and you're just starting out and you had 5 or 10 years just to do this kind of crazy stuff, man, it's fine. But anything older, the years you've invested in this, you can't get those back, right? If he spent 5 years in a campsite and it didn't work out, he's 39 years old as well, right?
Yeah.
He's going to kick himself.
It's
too much of a gamble.
So I think what we would say is go to lazymoniymachine.com, get a sample of our book, see what we're doing, and come and join us to learn a safer system to make passive income. And if you like to do that, we'll see you there. And otherwise, we'll see you as an audience for our next episode in the podcast.
And you know what, Eric? Just whilst we should take Bitcoin. Can we do that? That should be something that we're thinking of, right?
We should take Bitcoin.
Do you want? We should for buying the book and the course, right? Well, not the course, but the access to the group, the membership.
Oh, absolutely. That's a cool idea. Yeah, go for it. Definitely.
All right, there we go. Work in progress.
Work in progress. You can buy the Lazy Money Machine book and group for Bitcoins.
Yeah.